There's other projects around us that have more amenities than us and some that have less. So a tenant may be looking at that as well, saying, I want this amenity or I don't want this amenity. So don't over amenitize either, because that could go against you.
True, because some areas, there's a certain amount of rent that people are going to pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could put all the amenities in the world and you think, I'm going to get $2,500 a month in rent. And somebody that's going to live in that area, that's just not going to pay it, right? You definitely hit a ceiling. Definitely. Welcome to the Build for Rent podcast, where we explore the rapidly expanding world of build for rent properties across the United States. The housing crisis in the U.S. is difficult. There's just not enough affordable inventory out there for people to rent, and developers and builders and property managers are all rushing to fill that void. This podcast is meant to help you, the investor, explore that space a little bit more as we bring our experience having assisted in the development of 4,000 build for rent properties in 4 states to the table here. We encourage you to follow us on social media and wherever you get your podcasts on the major platforms like the Apple Store and Spotify. So today we want to explore something that needs to be considered. And I've got Chase and Sherida with me here today and most days, if not all days. So what we want to explore is the fact that when we build something to rent it, there's 2 spaces to be considered. A tenant is going to move into an apartment, a townhouse, or a home. They're going to live there. They're going to rent it. But that doesn't compute as to the whole experience that they're going to have. They're going to have a yard or common area, HOA managed area, and even a local economy that they interact with. This all needs to be considered when we're planning, whether it's a home or a small apartment building or a large, massive master planned complex. So today we're going to talk about what you need to consider, or at least what we've found to be helpful, as well as some of the painful lessons that we've learned on that front. So when we're thinking about that, Chase and Sherida, what is on your mind when it comes to, let's just call it like amenities? That could mean something in the project itself or like nearby businesses and or entertainment. What are we looking for?
I think in a project itself, if this is more of a tenant-based project and we're maybe speaking of a condo community, a townhome community, something of that nature, you probably want to have some kind of a clubhouse. A pool is nice. Obviously, there are unwanted things that come with a pool as far as like an HOA would go. But a pool, some kind of a playground for kids. Dog parks are always nice, if you're a pet-friendly community.
Grass area.
Yeah, some common area for grass. Maybe basketball court.
Pickleball.
That's huge right now.
Pickleball, yeah.
Trying to think what other.
I have something to say about that.
Okay.
Are you surprised?
No.
Okay.
Let's hear it.
So many of those things that you just listed are all very applicable, right? And I think it depends on the size, right? When you say, I'm going to put in a swimming pool in a build-for-rent community, well, how big is the community? The cost of running and operating a swimming pool and the hassle of it, frankly, only apply, in my opinion, you need to have at least 80 units to want to be able to do something like that, to be able to afford it within your budgets. Otherwise, it's just not worth it. You're going to be going out there all the time, and you get that budget every month of, wow, we're spending a lot on this pool based on what we're bringing in. But something that Chase said, like this is a weird little exception. You said grass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that grass, you got to mow it, you got to care for it, fertilize it, you got to do all those things. We've noticed one thing in our projects in Houston, Texas. I wish we could get all the grass out of there, right? Because it's expensive to water in that market all the time. And it's Houston. There's all kinds of weird bugs and stuff in the grass. And, where we live here in Utah, kids go out and they play on the grass. It gets green in April, right? It starts to fade by October. But you get 6 months out of the year where people are playing in the grass. They're soccer or whatever in games. In Texas, it's a place they call them chiggers, right? And all kinds of bugs. And you don't want to be on the grass nearly as much. So I think when we talk about the landscape and the amenities, what's the standard and what's good, popular locally, but also don't let that sacrifice being creative. You mentioned pickleball, right? A few years ago, that wasn't a thing. But now it's absolutely crazy in a lot of the projects that we do.
Yeah. Well, back to grass. So one thing that was interesting is we had a conversation down in Lake Powell last year with some friends, and they were saying like St. George, so a location south of Salt Lake, southern Utah, a lot of people down there are doing astroturf, and just to give it that look, right? And it's still pleasant for people to look on. We obviously, I haven't experienced that in any of the projects that I've been involved in. I haven't seen that, but maybe that's another option for some people where you're not having as many bugs. Obviously, there's some maintenance to that. I don't know.
Maybe something we do in Arizona, but does that get too warm or too hot?
These people actually put sprinklers that came up through it, so it kind of defeats the point of wasting the
water,
water, right? But I don't know. I know a lot of people are going to zero-scapes. That's what a lot of Arizona is more of a zero-scape, right?
Yeah.
But I think you do need some kind of an area, even if it's in the tot lot area, for kids to play, if this project lends itself to
a bunch of kids.
Yeah, younger demographics.
Yeah, if you're doing like an infill build for rent apartment building like near downtown in some major American city, that's much less of a concern. But if it's that kind of garden style, you're spread out over a lot of acreage, you have to have somewhere for people to run around. But we spend a lot of money on water in Texas, and we may tear some of that stuff up and do zero scale. A lot less maintenance, and I think that walking trails instead is probably something that tenants like a lot more. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, because if you have little kids, that's a great place for them to go ride their scooters or their skateboards, bikes, something like that, where it's not in the street. You're not telling them to go behind the units and drive in the alleyways.
I think it comes down to who is your tenant. What if it's a 55 and older community? What if it's a larger apartment complex? What if it's townhomes? Whatever the case is, who is going to be your consumer, the tenant?
Yeah, how do you find that out?
By doing your research ahead of time and who you're trying to target. Comes down to what you're looking to build within that area and what makes the most sense.
But if it was you, right? I pitch a project to you. It's 100 doors, it's townhomes, right? What specifically are you going to go do? I'm curious to go find out who is this tenant? Who's going to live there?
I would look what's there currently and what's coming in.
So surrounding properties,
see what's working, just have an idea and a good feel for the area and what they need and what the demand is for that location. And then once you figure out and understand who your tenant's going to be, then, okay, let's talk about amenities. I mean, we talked about pickleball. I think a lot of not just younger crowds, but 55 and older, they're loving pickleball as well. Probably doesn't make sense to put a big old tennis court there, right? I think they'd probably like the pickleball and maybe some other amenities versus maybe like the younger families. So that could differ or change depending on who your demographic target is.
Well, and if we're talking about even a smaller project, let's just say you have an infill lot and you're going to do one single family home. Maybe you look around and see, hey, is this close to parks where somebody could take their kids if you're building, a 3-4 bedroom home, something of that nature. So I think sometimes it may not just be project specific, but let's look in the neighborhood and see what's walkable. I know on a lot of websites, they give it a walkable score. How walkable is this project to other amenities, meaning outside things, grocery stores, stuff like that, because amenities can go both ways.
Well, that walkable score, I think it's neighborhoodscout.com.
They do one, yeah.
They have one. A lot of places have one, but that lends itself to a lot of what Chase was saying about what are the demographics, right? Are you going to put a playground in an area where most people are 55 and up, right? We did a project recently, Blackstone Farms in Provo, where this specifically came up. We have a small playground, like a basketball hoop, like a pavilion with a barbecue, but that's it. Why was that?
Because just north of us was a park.
Yeah.
A city-run park.
There was a huge park, and then within the project, in order to make the numbers work with the doors that we put in there, we normally like to put a clubhouse and a pool, but we couldn't fit that in there.
It wasn't going to, we weren't going to be able to get the revenue.
Yeah, it was
so the city's putting in a brand new, beautiful park with all kinds of, bathrooms and parking and huge playgrounds and everything. What is like a block north is all.
It's connected. Like if you take the road
Yeah.
going north, you're going to run right into it.
That's right. That's right. So sometimes the city or surrounding development will do your work for you on that, and that usually is going to tell you the tale about what kind of amenities you need to put in. We had a should we call it a horror story on a development recent? Well, it's not that recent, but why don't we talk about that, about the pool and clubhouse in Vineyard, Utah, and something to avoid when you're cooperating with other builders and or investors. When do you want to take that?
So that was more of a master plan community. So several builders were in here. We had 2 projects in, I guess, the north end of this.
Master community.
Master community.
Yes.
And we were tied to their clubhouse. They were going to build a clubhouse. The developer was.
So they're a master HOA that we have to abide by, but by building within our own sub HOA, we had access to whatever it was they were going to build.
Their pool, their clubhouse, their trails, their pickleball courts, their tennis courts, all of that. We finished this project, and we were told, if I remember correctly, it was like 6 months later this clubhouse was supposed to be done.
Yeah.
Literally, it was like 2.5 years later, maybe, that it ended up being done. So we
Yeah.
had tenants that were expecting to have amenities that had nothing, but were still paying an HOA fee,
Yeah.
which got them very upset.
They
The
were
clubhouse is
expecting a
since
nice
finished.
clubhouse because that's what was being talked about, and so that's what we talked about. And so from this story, it's important to understand, okay, what do you have control over? You're being told one thing, but things can happen, and if it's out of your control, you need to be careful on what you're promising or what you're saying to your investors and the tenants.
Bottom line is, don't advertise amenities to your tenants in your lease up that you don't have control over, right? Because that's what we're going to have a clubhouse pool. That's a hard conversation for the property manager to have, when lease renewal comes. Hey, you want to renew your lease? Well, I did, but I don't have any of this stuff that you promised.
And I paid for it.
And you paid for it. Ugh, gross. And you have no way to facilitate that or make that go faster because it's some other builder that doesn't care. So I think we learned that we don't advertise. We don't assume that somebody's just going to come in and complete this. And ideally, too, those core amenities that you really have to have, whatever you decide those to be, you have to have control over them. Otherwise, you might consider not doing that deal. I think there's another project up the road from that one that has been a really good success story on amenities, and that's Easton Park. I'm thinking of 2 reasons and would love to hear your feedback. Number one, when that was planned, pickleball was kind of a thing, and you look at years later and what that's been. That pickleball court, well, there's like 5 of them or 6 of them in there.
I think there's about 6.
Yeah, they're full like all the time. All the time. People are there always. And that's been a huge, huge draw.
Yeah, and then there's like a 3-acre park, is it? Right in the middle of it?
I think it's like 7 acres.
7 acres?
Yeah.
Yeah, even bigger than that. So
The nice thing with that one, though, is that's maintained by the city.
by the city,
Exactly,
yeah. So
yeah.
nice green space, maintained, couple of nice little zip lines for the kids, park areas. So turned out really nice.
And that was genius. And I don't know if it was intentional or what, but yeah, the situation there is, in order to get the development approved, the city wanted a park. We've got to build it and pay for it. But when it's done, we turn it over to them. So it's a huge draw, but it's not coming out of the HOA budget. It's a city budget, and they have to take care of it and maintain it. But it's literally in the middle of our project. We've got these kind of stacked flat style units all along the park. People go out the front door, and there it is. I think another huge, huge amenity that really works, and you got to decide if you want to deal with this, right? Dog parks. What do you think about dog parks?
I think it's better to have a dog park where it's sectioned off with fences versus not having one. So hopefully you can kind of control where the dogs go, because a lot of tenants that we've noticed, they're going to come with pets or dogs or animals, right? And so if you can control where that goes, because we know what dogs like to do, right?
Do.
Do. And so a lot of times you can't help that. The tenants are going to take their dogs out, or maybe they're going to see it happen or not see it happen, but dogs are going to go to the bathroom in places. And so if you can control where they go and where they hang out, that's going to help, hopefully.
That same AF project does have a dog park
It
that
ha-
is fenced.
And it works well.
Yep. There's another one that we did up in Idaho.
Mhm.
Same fenced dog park right across from the clubhouse. It's actually kind of cute. It has little toys and stuff for the dogs.
Yeah,
to
like
run
little
on.
ramps and like, tunnels they can run through. Yeah, it is kind of funny. People ask all the time, like, should I take I combined two words there. Should I take tenants with pets in my property? And we've kind of just accepted that you have to do that, right? That people want to bring them. And if you say, I don't take them, a lot of those tenants are going to bring them anyway. And you're going to find out about it. You're going to have to fine them. It's going to be stupid. So make yourself pet friendly, have that dog park. So I was doing some vetting on a project in Texas once. And I went out with our broker down there, John, great dude, and we toured a couple of these properties. And this leasing agent, this was like 5 or 6 years ago. I thought she was literally joking. I thought maybe she's got a really dry sense of humor. Kept telling me about how they DNA test dogs at their. I'm like, you literally collect DNA and send it into a lab. And so now we do that almost across the board. You can bring your pet, but they're going to have to submit a sample. And so when we go do the random spot check, we send that in. There's no way to lie about if it was you or not. And you get fined. And because, you do bring in those dogs, you got to do it. But it's expensive handling this situation. And if somebody knows they can get DNA tested, they're probably a little more likely to clean up after their dog.
And I think that makes it nice for the rest of the tenants, if you don't have a dog, knowing, hey, we can hold some people accountable here.
We can hold some people accountable. Yeah, and you got to put those doggy stations, right? I'm president of one of the HOA boards right now, and we've had to install extra doggy stations and trash cans. I think that's another big thing. We've said around here many times that amenities draw tenants to a project, but they stay because of parking and garbage. When you're going to renew your lease and you're like, I can never park, or I can never have friends over, there's nowhere to park. And we've got some projects like that where parking is hard. I think a lot of cities give you less parking than you actually need. And it's tempting as a developer, right? Parking is the ultimate density killer. It kills your profit. You see those big parking lots and you think, I could have built units there. Mm-hmm. But, you can get so dense that nobody wants to live there. So what does it matter? There's that line you cross. But the garbage can be a challenge. I've noticed that even culturally between states, there's ways that people think about garbage differently. Like, should I have to take it out? Do I have to put it in the dumpster? Right? And there's a big education process there. Chase, are you still president in one of the Vineyard HOAs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tucker Row.
All right. Does Tucker Row do dumpsters or cans?
So when we started that project, they used to do dumpsters. And then shortly after, I think it was like 3 to 6 months into that community when it was finished and stabilized, we found out that a bunch of just random people, we didn't know who they were, that didn't live there, were coming and just randomly dumping their garbage, their couches, whatever it was, in the dumpsters. And so the owners or the tenants, they weren't able to take out their trash. They were just getting filled up too fast. So we had to make that adjustment.
Mm-hmm. I'm going through that in Texas right now at one. People just, I call them couch bandits.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just couches just tossed outside of dumpsters and it looks terrible.
It just clogs up the whole dumpster, and
it looks gross, and it's unsightly. We just spent like $8,000 doing a complete power wash of the entire subdivision because you build it and there's dust and things happen, and a couple years later it's due for a bath, right? But when you have that trash situation, those enclosures, they get so nasty. Mm-hmm. And the before and after of power washing out those enclosures and just how the project looked in general, it's just a great way to maintain it. So you did cans. Now people have nowhere to go toss a couch or random trash. I may or may not know a guy that occasionally, when he has too much trash, finds a dumpster. I don't know if you know anybody like that, or if any of our listeners may have ever thought of doing something like that.
Kind of like I did last night after I moved my kids into their townhomes. We had boxes, and there happened to be a dumpster. Yeah. It was on site, though, so at least it was the builders that we bought from.
Yes,
but
exactly. Yeah. It is a temptation that people have. You go toss stuff in a dumpster. So I don't know. I've been kind of flirting with the idea of going to cans at that project because what would happen? we get to demo those dumpster enclosures and pick up 2 to 3 extra parking spaces spread out evenly over, there's probably 6 or 7 dumpsters. I've got 18 extra guest parking spaces.
Mm-hmm.
But the units aren't really designed in a way where there's a good place to keep a trash can.
Right, yeah. So there's some give and take there. If you get rid of the dumpsters, you have extra parking possibly.
Yeah.
But if you have trash cans, then there's not really much room to put the trash cans in some projects, or depend on what the project looks like.
It might be a good idea for us to think in the future of, when we design these buildings, have the architects, can we get a small concrete pad somewhere good for a trash can to go?
Yeah, right off to the side or something like that.
Because the drawback to this is if we have dumpsters, this turned into a garbage conversation, right? If we have dumpsters, people are tossing stuff. They're not putting stuff all the way in the trash, right? At one project I've worked with, we took the lids off because we observed mom sending kids out, and he couldn't sling the big heavy trash bag up over the top and hold the lid open at the same time. So we took the lids off. But guess what happens? When the big garbage truck comes and it sticks those forks through the slots on the side and lifts it up over the top, the lids aren't holding the stuff in, so trash goes everywhere. I mean, we've had to hire an on-site property manager to just clean stuff up all the time because it's there all the time. So I think the dumpsters is you saying, I'm willing to deal with this problem in 6 locations. The trash cans, you might be creating it over 200 locations. I don't know. So have you been pleased with it? Is trash a problem?
It's helped.
It's helped?
It helped out a lot, yeah. Yeah. I think it cost a little bit more for every individual unit to have its own trash can. That's why they didn't do it before. But it helped. I mean, they just didn't have anywhere to take their trash out, so we had to make that move.
Yeah. There's a new one I'm involved with where it's a different kind of dumpster, where there's a door that you open in the side. And so people aren't leaving trash out. They're putting it in the side of the dumpster. And that means when they pick it up and dump it, it doesn't go everywhere because they trigger a button on top that opens it just for the trash truck. But there's still the occasional couch. So now we're putting in a gate. I'm going to gate that community so not just any rando can come in there.
And that would help a lot, I would think.
What do you think about gates as an amenity?
I think that there's pros and cons. Obviously, depending on the location of the project, a gate could be a good thing. You're going to deter people from just driving through, so getting random people, trash-wise, or using the amenities in that project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know sometimes I feel like it may be a hindrance because maybe it would scare a tenant off from even wanting to come in.
I don't know.
To apply. I don't know.
I think if you've got a good leasing, I know there's new technology where they can do apps on their smartphone, and that opens the gate for them. And then there's a master code given to Amazon and the Postal Service that everybody can get in there that needs to get in there. You have to have a crash gate for emergency services to get in through. But I don't know, more and more, I'm feeling like gates are probably a good thing as long as you plan for it on the front end. I've got one I'm dealing with where we didn't plan for it on the front end. So we gotta put it in. It's going to be a mess.
It'll be interesting to see what happens in one of our Arizona projects that will be gated versus some of the others that aren't. So, I think time will kind of tell on that, give us more experience. I don't have a ton of experience with that. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to see. So much of this is you learn things about a build for rent project as you go down. You get the feedback from the tenants and from your investors, and you realize things that you might need. One that I'm looking at right now, and this is pretty common in an A-class apartment building that has a big, beautiful clubhouse, is they'll receive your packages for you, right? Because we've got one where packages are getting stolen. You got those porch pirates, right? So we're going to put in one of those package lockers. But where do we put it? It wasn't designed. The project wasn't designed for that. So there's going to be some construction that we're going to have to do. But bottom line, everything that you can do to make the tenants happier, to stay longer, to put up with those rent increases, or to get new rental rates and raise them over time, that's stuff that you got to do. It pays off. Thousands and thousands of dollars in expenses for amenities. If it keeps people longer and gets them to pay even $25 a month more, that's important.
100%.
And that's key. It's understanding your demographic that we talked about already, and then understanding, okay, what amenities are going to fit that demographic, figuring out what those costs are going to be for that demographic, for that project, right? And then is that going to allow you to get more rent or the rent that you're looking for? And then what you just talked about, is it going to keep the tenant longer?
Yeah.
Decrease that vacancy or
Well, I think-
lease up faster?
And I think you need to look at the projects around you too, right? I think we have a few projects that we've done where there's other projects around us that have more amenities than us and some that have less. So a tenant may be looking at that as well, saying, I want this amenity or I don't want this amenity. So don't over amenitize either,
True.
because that could go against you.
True, because some areas, there's a certain amount of rent that people are going to pay, right?
Mhm,
And you
yeah.
could put all the amenities in the world and you think, I'm going to get $2,500 a month in rent. And somebody that's going to live in that area, that's just not going to pay it, right? You definitely hit a ceiling. Definitely. Well, I think on our next episode, we definitely want to get more into, we kind of talked about communities and some of these amenities. Answers, it all depends on where you go, but we gave some options. But let's get in on the next one into the actual units themselves, things like smart home features, types of flooring and layouts and unit counts that are going to be important. But before we hang it up today, any other comments, anything pop in your heads?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, no, that was good. I don't have anything else.
Chase thinks it was good.
Yeah.
So give it 5 stars on iTunes because Chase said it was good. Thanks everybody for listening. Remember to subscribe on iTunes and on Spotify. And as always, please consult with your proper legal, tax, and other experts on this topic, as we're just giving an educational podcast here and we're not trying to be your CPA or your attorney. We'll catch you next time.